The council chamber floated above the gas giant's Arnax, a ring of crystal and light where the greatest minds of the galaxy gathered to decide the fate of worlds. 7 species sat in judgment. Their voices echoed in perfect harmony, cold and precise. Below them stood a single human, dressed in plain gray, his face calm, his eyes sharp. His name was Kellen Voss, Earth's last hope. The trial had begun with silence. The High Speaker of the Velm, a tall being with silver skin and no mouth, pulsed his words through the air. You claim your species is ready for the stars. You claim equality. But equality must be earned. The crucible trial will decide your worth. A hologram lit the room. A planet, black and red, spinning slowly. Storms the size of continents raged across its surface. Lightning flashed in constant waves. The name appeared, Vorlag, a death world. A place where even their strongest warriors lasted days. 10 humans had been sent. Only one was expected to survive. The truth, the council hoped none would. Humanity was too emotional, too violent, too young. They wanted an excuse to close the door. Kellen said nothing. He remembered the volunteers. Some cried. Some prayed. Some laughed like it was a game. He had not volunteered. He was chosen. A soldier from the northern wilds of Earth, where winters killed the weak and silence taught wisdom. He had survived avalanches, wolves, and war. But this was different. This was not war. This was nature at its most furious. The drop pod hit the atmosphere like a meteor. Fire surrounded it, then silence. The door blew open. Smoke, ash. The air smelled like blood and rust. Kellen stepped out. The sky was purple. Trees rose like spears, black and sharp. The ground pulsed underfoot, warm and alive. Somewhere far away, something screamed, a sound that made his bones vibrate. He checked his gear. Knife, water purifier, emergency beacon. No weapons, no suit, just a human in the wild. The first night, he heard them. Creatures with too many legs, eyes glowing green, moving through the trees. He stayed by the fire. They did not come close, but they watched. By day 3, 2 of the other humans were gone. Their beacons stopped, no bodies found, just silence. One had run into the jungle screaming. Another had set his own fire too high. Something came from underground and took him. Kellen moved. He found a cave, high ground, fresh water. He learned. Fast. The rivers boiled at noon. The fruit on the south vines was poison. The birds did not fly. They lunged, with beaks like daggers. He saw the first Vorathrax on the 5th day. It rose from a canyon like a mountain given life. Black scales, each as big as a shield, eyes like molten stone. It roared, and the rock cracked. The sound was not just noise, it was a weapon. Kellen felt it in his chest, in his teeth. The other humans would have frozen, run, died. Kyle and dropped to one knee. He did not look away. He raised his hand, palm out, not in fear, but in challenge, or peace. He was not sure. The beast paused. It tilted its head. Then it turned and vanished into the mist. That night, Kellen dreamed of Earth, of snow, of his sister's voice. He woke with a tear on his cheek. He wiped it fast. Emotion was a luxury. Here, only will matter. On the 10th day, he found the juvenile. It was trapped under a fallen spire of rock, one leg crushed, bleeding black blood. It was smaller than the adult, but still twice the size of a bear. It hissed, tried to bite, but had no strength. Kellen could have left it, should have. Instead, he dug, he pushed, he used a log as a lever. Hours passed, the sun burned, his hands bled, but he freed it. The creature looked at him, not with hate, with something else. Confusion, pain. Kellen tore his shirt and rapped the wound. He left water nearby. Then he walked away. He did not expect to see it again. But the next morning, it was there, following at a distance, watching. And Kellen smiled, just a little, because he understood something the galaxy did not. Humans do not conquer nature by force. We survive by connection. And sometimes, the wild chooses us back. They said no human could survive Vorlag. The galaxy watched as 10 were dropped onto the black soil of the death world. Cameras followed their every move. The Council of 7 expected graves. They got silence. 9 signals died within days. The 10th, Kellen Voss, vanished. No final scream. No body. Just a fading pulse deep in the jungle. The aliens called it proof. Proof that humanity was fragile. That Earth did not belong among the stars. They laughed in their crystal halls. They closed the files. They moved on. But they were wrong. So wrong. Kellen did not die. He woke in smoke and ash. The pod cracked open like an egg. The air burned his lungs. The sky was a sickly purple. split by lightning that never touched the ground. He stood slowly, every muscle tight. His gear was basic: knife, purifier, beacon, no gun, no suit. Just a man and a planet that killed for fun. He looked around. Black trees rose like spears. The ground was warm. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Somewhere, far off, a roar shook the air. Not wind, not storm. Something alive. Something huge. He did not run. He did not panic. He breathed. Then he walked. The first night he built a fire, not for warmth, for light, for warning. He sat with his back to stone, knife in hand. The jungle came alive after dark. Shapes moved between the trees. Eyes glowed. Clicking sounds, slithering. Something tried to rush the fire. A six-legged thing with claws and too many mouths. It hissed and backed off. Kellen stayed awake. He learned fast. Fire kept them back. Silence kept him alive. By morning he found water. A stream. Clear, but moving too fast. He tested it. Poison. He boiled it. Still poison. He walked until he found a thermal spring. Steam rose from cracks in the rock. The water was hot but clean. He filled his canteen. He ate nothing. Hunger would come. So would weakness. He had to move. On the third day he found the first body. One of the other humans. Half buried in mud. No wounds, just empty eyes. The beacon was dead. Kellen closed the man's eyes. No words, no prayer, just respect. He took nothing, not even the knife. He left him where he fell. The planet had claimed him. That was its right. The second body was worse. Torn apart. Bones scattered. The beacon still blinked. Kellen stepped back. This was not accident. This was hunting. Something had done this. Something smart. He scanned the trees. Listened. The jungle was quiet. Too quiet. He moved on. He found shelter in a cave high on a ridge. Dry. Hidden. Good view. He set traps. Sharp stakes in soft ground. Fire pits along likely paths. He made a spear from a broken branch and the knife blade. He waited. The first predator came at dusk. A beast with 4 arms and a tail like a whip. It moved fast, silent. Kellen saw the shadow. He lit the fire pit. The creature jumped back. He threw the spear. Missed. It charged. He rolled. Cut its leg with the knife. It screamed and fled. He did not chase. He had no energy to waste. Days passed. He ate raw fish from a hidden pool. Drank boiled water. Slept in shifts. He marked the sun. Watched the stars. He saw the Union ships above. They never looked down. They thought he was dead. Then on the 7th night he heard a new sound, a cry. Not rage. Pain. He followed it. Deep in a ravine he found it. A juvenile Vorathrax trapped under a fallen rock spire. Its leg was crushed. Black blood seeped into the dirt. It tried to bite him when he came close, but it had no strength. Its eyes were dim. Not evil. Not mindless. Just suffering. Kellen hesitated. This was the apex killer of Vorlag. The thing that broke armies. The council said they could not be tamed. Could not be reasoned with. But this one was young. Wounded. Alone. He dug. He pushed. He used a log as a lever. Hours passed. His hands bled. His back burned. But he lifted the rock just enough. The creature pulled free. It collapsed. Breathing hard. It looked at him. Not with hate. With something else. Ellie tore his shirt. He cleaned the wound. Wrapped it tight. Left water and a piece of fish. Then he walked away. He did not expect it to follow. But at dawn it was there. Standing at the edge of his camp. Watching. Kellen did not reach for the knife. He sat by the fire. Ate slowly. Showed no fear. The next night it came closer. The night after that it drank from his spring. And on the 10th night it lay down just outside the light. Not attacking. Not running. Waiting. Kellen looked at the stars. The ships were gone. The galaxy had forgotten him. But down here in the dark with fire and blood and a beast that should have killed him, he felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. He was not just surviving. He was becoming something else. And the planet was watching. It had never seen a human who did not fight it or flee it, but one who stood, who helped, who stayed. Something ancient stirred beneath the soil. Something old, something awake. And far above in the cold halls of the Union, a single beacon pulsed in the dark. Not dead. Not broken. Still sending. Still alive. Kellen Voss was not coming home. He was becoming legend. The jungle breathed like a living thing. Steam rose from cracks in the earth. The trees swayed without wind. Kellen woke before dawn. The fire low. The air thick with the smell of wet stone and iron. The juvenile Vorathrax lay just beyond the light, curled like a shadow. Its wound was healing. It lifted its head as Kellen moved. No growl. No fear. Just watchfulness. Kellen nodded. Not a pet. Not a friend, not yet, but not an enemy. That was enough. He drank from his canteen and checked the traps. One had caught a scaled runner, a fast lizard-like creature with armored skin. He gutted it with care, saved the organs for bait, roasted the meat on a spit. He offered a piece to the beast. It sniffed, hissed once, then ate. Kellen smiled. Small victory. Days turned to weeks. He marked them with notches on a bone. 10, 20, 30. The Vorthrax stayed. It grew stronger, faster. It began to hunt on its own, vanishing for hours, returning with blood on its claws. Once it brought back the remains of a clawed stalker, one of the things that had tried to kill Kellen. It dropped the head at his feet, a gift, or a warning. Kellen buried it. He did not want war. He wanted balance. But Vorlag was not built for balance. It was built to kill. On the 42nd day, the sky split open. A meteor screamed through the atmosphere and crashed to valleys over. The ground shook for minutes. Smoke rose like a black pillar. Kellen packed his gear. He knew fire meant danger, but also opportunity. Scavenged metal, tools, maybe even a working beacon. He set out, the Vorthrax moving silently beside him. They found the crater at dusk. The rock was not stone. It was ship debris, alien, not Union. Something older, twisted metal, strange symbols, and inside, movement. Kellen froze. The Vorthrax crouched low. Things crawled from the wreckage, pale, many-legged, with acid dripping from their jaws. They moved in silence, hunting, feeding. They were not from Vorlag. They were invaders, parasites. They killed a pack of night runners and dissolved their bones in seconds. Kellen backed away. This was no natural predator. This was war. That night, he watched from a ridge. The creatures spread like a plague. Anything that touched them died. The jungle burned where they passed. Even the great trees withered. The Vorthrax growled deep in its chest, not fear, rage. This was its world, its home, and they were poisoning it. Kellen made a decision. He would not hide. He would not run. He would fight. But not alone. He studied the land, the thermal vents, the cliffs, the rivers of boiling mud. He saw the patterns, how the predators avoided certain zones, how the storms came at dawn, how the Vorthrax reacted to sound. He remembered Earth's old war tactics, fire, terrain, ambush. He began to prepare. He carved spikes from black rock, set them in the soft ground near the vents. He dug pits and covered them with branches. He collected gas from the fumaroles in sealed skins, flammable, dangerous, perfect. The Vorthrax watched, learned, followed. On the third night, Kellen lit a fire far from camp. He beat a rock with a stick, loud, steady, a call. The swarm came. They poured into the clearing like a wave of white death. Kellen waited. Then he dropped a torch into the gas line. Fire exploded across the ground. The front line of creatures shrieked. As they burned, others fell into the pits. Spikes tore through them. The noise brought the jungle's predators, night runners, sky lizards, even a full-grown Vorthrax pair. They attacked the swarm without hesitation. Chaos erupted. Kellen stood on a rock, spear in hand, directing the flow. He threw burning bundles into clusters. He used sound to steer the swarm into traps. The juvenile Vorthrax charged like thunder, tearing through the invaders, shielding Kellen when one tried to leap at him. The battle lasted hours. By dawn, the swarm was broken. Most were dead. The rest fled into the deep caves. Kellen collapsed by the fire, blood on his arms, smoke in his lungs. The Vorthrax lay beside him, breathing hard, but alive. Victorious. Kellen looked at the beast. He placed a hand on its scaled neck. No words, just touch. Something had changed, not just in the jungle. In him. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a leader. Of man, of beast. Of world. Over the next weeks, the bond grew. The Vorthrax followed his voice, responded to gestures. It protected the camp, hunted for food. It even allowed Kellen to ride on its back as they scouted the land. The other predators began to avoid them, not out of fear of one, but of both. Together they were something new, a force of nature. One night Kellen found a working piece of the alien ship, a data core. He powered it with a thermal cell. It showed star maps, signals. One was repeating, a distress call, not from Earth, from the Union. They were declaring the Crucible trial over. Humanity had failed. Earth was denied. Kellen stared at the screen. Cold anger rose in his chest. They had not even waited. They had not looked. They had judged and thrown them away. He shut it off. Then he stood. He walked to the highest cliff. The Vorthrax behind him. The wind howled. The sky burned with stars. He raised his arms, and he roared. Not a human sound, not a beast's cry, but something between, a challenge, a promise. The Vorthrax joined him. Its voice shook the mountain. Rocks fell, birds fled, the jungle fell silent. Somewhere, in space, a Union probe picked up the sound, not a distress signal, but a declaration. The man was not dead, he was awake. And he was coming. Kellen turned. He looked at the beast, at the land that had tried to kill him and now obeyed him. He was not ready to return. Not yet. But when he did, the galaxy would hear his footsteps and know they had made a mistake thinking a human could be broken, be fire, be bled by time, because man was not the weakest species, so were the ones who stood when all others fell low, rose when the world tried to bury usant who brought the storm when they dared to look away. Kellen Voss was no longer just a man, was the storm, and the storm was coming. Word count 820. The wind howled across the black cliffs of Vorlag as Kellen stood at the edge of the world. The great beast crouched beside him like a shadow given form. The sky burned with storms that never ended, lightning dancing between clouds like ancient spirits at war. Below, the jungle pulsed with life, a living network of teeth and claw and root. It had been months since the crash, months since the swarm, months since the galaxy had declared him dead. But death never took root here, not for him, not anymore. Kellen had changed. His body was lean and hard, scarred from fire and fang. His hands were no longer soft like a city man's, but calloused and strong, shaped by stone and bone. He wore armor now, not metal, not plastic, but crafted from the scales of fallen predators, stitched with sinew and bound with black resin from the deep trees. His spear was longer than a man, tipped with the fang of a dead sky hunter. He did not carry a weapon because he feared. He carried it because the wild respected strength, and Kellen had become strength itself. The Vorthrax was no longer just a companion. It followed him not out of loyalty to a master, but because it had chosen him. The bond between them was not trained, it was earned, through fire, through silence, through blood spilled for one another. When Kellen was poisoned by a venomous crawler, the beast stayed awake for 3 nights, growling at anything that came near. When the beast was wounded in a fight with a rival predator, Kellen climbed the cliffs to gather healing moss, risking his life on the razor vines. They were not man and animal. They were 2 kings of different kinds who had found common ground in a world that allowed no weakness. But Kellen knew the jungle was not his final battlefield. The galaxy still believed humans were weak, that Earth was a backwater, that they had failed the trial. He would make them see. One night he returned to the wreckage of the alien ship. He dug deeper this time, past the twisted metal, into the core chamber. There he found a working transmitter, ancient, damaged, but repairable. He spent days fixing it, using parts from his own beacon, wiring it to a thermal vent for power. When it finally sparked to life, he did not send a plea for rescue. He sent a message, a single repeating signal. Not in Union code. In human military format. Trial completed. Subject alive. Returning for judgment. He left no name, no rank, no plea. Just fact. Then he powered it down and buried the machine under stone. Let them find it. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Back at the high ridge, he trained. Not just himself, the beast. He taught it to respond to hand signals, to hold position, to charge on command. He studied the movements of the other Vorthrax packs, learning their hierarchy, their calls, their wars. He did not seek to rule them. He sought to understand, and slowly, they began to recognize him, not as prey, not as invader, but as something else, a presence, a force. One dawn, a full pack approached the ridge. 5 adults, massive and scarred, eyes glowing like coals. They did not attack. They stopped at the edge of the firelight and lowered their heads. One by one they turned and left. The juvenile Vorthrax rumbled deep in its chest, not a threat, a sign of respect. Kellen realized then, he was no longer just surviving Vorlag. He was becoming part of it. The planet responded to him. The rivers shifted to give him clean water. The predators avoided his path. Even the storms seemed to pause when he traveled. The ancient ones, the deep ones, the things that lived beneath the crust, they were aware. He felt them in his dreams, a pulse, a voice without words, a welcome. He began to explore the northern wastes, where the ground was cracked and the air burned. There he found ruins, not alien, not natural, carved stone, symbols like stars and claws, a civilization long gone. He found bones, not of animals, of giants, beings who once ruled this world, and in the center of the ruins, a throne of black rock. He sat on it. Not to claim it. To remember. All things fall, but some rise again. Weeks passed. Then one morning, a new sound cut through the sky. Not thunder, not beast. Engines. Alien looked up. A small drone, Union design, hovered above the valley, scanning, recording. It had found the signal. It had seen the fire. It had captured footage of him walking beside the Vorthrax. Like it was nothing. Like it was natural. He did not hide. He stood tall. He raised his spear, and he stared into the lens. The drone lingered for a moment. Then it turned and shot into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. Kellen knew what would come next. They would not believe it at first. They would think it a trick, a hallucination, a hoax. But the footage would spread. The council would argue. The species would whisper, and somewhere, a human child on a distant colony would see that image, a man and a monster walking as one, and feel something rise in their chest. Pride. Hope. Fire. That night Kellen stood at the edge of the cliff again, the beast beside him, the stars above. He spoke for the first time in weeks. They left me here to die. They thought this world would break me. They thought no human could survive. But they forgot one thing. We do not survive by being the strongest. We survive by adapting. By connecting. By standing when the universe says fall. And now I am not just a man. I am what comes after. When the weak become strong. When the forgotten become legend. When the cast-off returns not as a beggar but as a king, and the galaxy learns that. To test humanity, to invite the storm, Vorthrax lifted its head and roared into the night. And far away on a station of glass and light a screen flickered. And a single message apparatus signal confirmed. Origin, Vorlag. Source, human. Status, alive. Silence fell across the command room. Then panic. Because they had not sent a rescue. He was coming on his own terms. And he was not alone. The signal spread like fire through dry grass. Across the Galactic Union it burned. Through data lines. Whispered in council chambers. Flashed on screens in markets and war rooms. A single phrase repeated in every language. The human on Vorlag is alive. Not only alive. He is moving. He has the beast. It obeys him. The footage. Played on loop. Grainy. Real. No edits. No tricks. There he was. Kellen Voss. Barefoot on black soil. Armor of bone and scale. Spear in hand. And beside him the Vorthrax, a creature of nightmare, walking like a hound at his side. The galaxy watched and could not look away. On Earth the people rose. Not in anger. In pride. For years they had been told they were weak. Too emotional. Too violent. Not evolved enough. Their planet too chaotic. Their history too bloody. Now they saw one of their own standing where no alien had ever survived. Not just surviving, leading. Commanding the uncommandable. Children in colonies on Mars and Titan stared at the screens and whispered his name like a prayer. Soldiers polished their boots and stood taller. Scientists worked through the night. This was not just survival. This was proof. Humanity was not behind. We were different. And different could be strong or dot. But in the Union Council Hall silence ruled. The 7 species sat in their floating thrones. The Veln with their silver skin. The Xandarians with eyes like stars. The heavy Gorth who spoke in pulses. They watched the footage again and again. They ran simulations. They consulted biologists, psychologists, warriors. None could explain it. How did he survive the poison rains? How did he heal the beast? How did he make it follow? The council declared it impossible. Then they called it dangerous. He must be contained. He must not return. They sent a scout ship not to rescue but to observe, to confirm, to assess the threat. The ship descended through Vorlag's storm layer. It hovered above the jungle scanning. Heat signatures, life forms, energy spikes. It found the camp on the ridge. Small, efficient. No technology, no weapons, just a man and a predator living as one. Drones dropped silently. They recorded everything. Kellen knew they were there. He did not hide. He sat by the fire, ate, cleaned his spear. Then he looked up, straight into the lens. He stood. He walked to the center of the clearing. He raised his arms, and he spoke. His voice was calm, clear, carried by the wind. Tell the council I passed the trial. Tell them I survived. Tell them I tamed the beast not with chains but with trust. Tell them I am coming home. And when I arrive I will not beg for a seat. I will claim it. Then he turned. The Vorthrax rose from the shadows. It did not growl. It did not charge. It simply walked to his side, to King's. One purpose. The drones fled. The ship left orbit fast. Back at Union Command the footage played in the war room. The leaders of 100 species watched. Some laughed, some sneered. The Gorth said he was a freak. The Veln said he was a danger to the natural order. But the Xandarian elder, a being older than nations, stood slowly. His voice was like thunder underwater. You do not understand what you are seeing. This is not taming. This is bonding. No other species can do this. Not the Gorth with all their strength, not the Velm with all their knowledge. They dominate, they control, they fear the wild. But this human, he entered the jaws of death and did not fight. He healed, he gave, he earned the trust of a creature that has killed starfarers in their armor. That is not power. That is something deeper. What connection. And that is what makes them dangerous. Because if one human can do this, what will 10 do? What will 1,000? What will an entire species that sees not enemy in the wild but partner? Silence followed. Then, fear, because the truth was spreading. Humans were not weak. We were something the galaxy had never seen. Beings who could walk with monsters and call them friend. Weeks passed. The council debated. They tried to erase the footage. They called it propaganda. They said Kellen was corrupted by the planet, that he was no longer fully human. But the truth could not be buried. On dozens of worlds, humans who had been slaves, servants, laborers began to stand. They spoke louder. They worked harder. They dreamed bigger. The myth grew. The man who tamed Vorlag, the king of beasts, the Stormwalker. Then the Union made a decision. They would bring him back. Not as a hero. As a subject. A ship was sent. Not a rescue vessel. A containment craft, armed, shielded, designed to capture. Its mission was simple. Retrieve the human. Sedate the beast. Study them both. But they did not know what waited for them. Kellen felt the ship before he saw it. The sky trembled. The Vorthrax growled low. Birds fled the trees. He stood at the edge of the cliff and watched the silver craft descend like a blade. It landed far from the camp. 6 figures in heavy armor stepped out. Weapons ready, scanners active. They moved like hunters. Kellen did not run. He walked. The Vorthrax at his side. They met in the valley between ridge and ruin. The lead officer spoke through a voice modulator. Kellen Voss, you are under Union order to return for evaluation. The beast will be contained. You will not resist. Kellen looked at him, then at the sky. I passed the trial. I survived Vorlag. I earned my place. You did not come to rescue me. You came to take me. That is not how this ends. The officer raised his weapon. Then the Vorthrax moved, not fast, not sudden. It stepped forward. 1 step. The ground cracked, the air shook. The soldiers froze. Kellen did not raise his spear. He simply said, I am not going with you unless you say it. Say what? That I passed, that humanity passed, that we are not specimens. We are equals. Silence. The wind howled. Then from the ship a voice over COMMS. This is Union. Command Kellen Voss. You have demonstrated survival beyond expected parameters. The Crucible trial is concluded. Humanity has passed. Kellen looked at the soldiers. Now lower your weapons. And kneel. Not to me. To what I represent. The officer hesitated. Then, slowly. He did. One by one. They knelt. On Vorlag. On live feed. Across the galaxy. Humanity had not begged. We had made them bow. The dust settled in the valley of black stone as the Union soldiers remained. On one knee their weapons lowered their heads. Bowed not in surrender to a man, but to what he stood for. Kellen Voss did not smile. He did not raise his spear in victory. He simply turned and walked back toward the ridge, the Vorthrax moving like a shadow at his side. The message had been sent. The galaxy had seen. Humanity was no longer beneath. The stars, we were walking into them. The containment ship did not leave empty. Kellen agreed to return, but not as a prisoner, not as a subject, as a representative. He boarded the vessel alone. The beast followed. The crew trembled as the great Vorthrax stepped onto the ramp, its claws leaving marks on the metal, its molten eyes scanning the corridors. No cage was built, no chains were offered. Kellen stood in the command deck and handed the captain a data chip. Everything I recorded. The survival. The bond. The swarm war. Play it for the council. Let them see what they tried to bury. The captain took it, his hand shaking, not from fear of the man, but of what he carried. This was not just footage. It was proof. Proof that humanity could do what no other species had ever done. Survive the unsurvivable. Tame the untamable. Rise when the universe said stay down. The journey to the Union core took 9 days. Across the void the ship moved like a whisper. Inside, Kellen did not sleep much. He stood at the observation window, watching the stars. The Vorthrax lay behind him, silent, watchful. Crew members passed by to look. Some left food at the door, not out of kindness, out of respect. They had seen the footage now. They had felt the ground shake when the beast stepped. They knew this was not a pet. This was a force of nature that answered to a human voice, and that changed everything. On the 3rd day, a young engineer dared to speak. She stood at the edge of the chamber, her voice soft, How did you do it? Kellen did not turn. I did not try to dominate the planet. I listened to it. I did not fight the beast. I saved it. We are not meant to conquer nature. We are meant to walk with it. She nodded slowly. Then she placed a small device on the floor, a music player. From it came a sound soft and deep, a human song, piano, voice, something old, something true. Kellen closed his eyes. For the first time in months he felt something warm in his chest. Memory, home, Earth. The Vorthrax lifted its head, not in warning, in curiosity. Kellen said nothing, but that night the song played again and again. By the time the ship reached the Union core, the entire crew had heard the recordings. They had seen Kellen heal the wounded beast, lead the predators against the swarm, stand alone against the storm, and they had seen the Council's cold faces as they declared humanity a failure without even waiting. Anger grew, not just for Kellen, for all humans, for every species that had been judged too soon. The core station hung above a dead star, a ring of light and power where the Council held court. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy lived and worked there. When the ship docked, every screen lit up with the same image. Kellen walking down the ramp, barefoot, armored in bone. The Vorthrax behind him. No leash, no cage, just trust. The news exploded. Markets fell silent. Ships delayed departure. Children stopped playing. They watched. They listened. They remembered. The Council summoned him at once. No guards, no weapons. Just the 7 leaders in their floating thrones. The chamber was cold light. Perfect, lifeless. Kellen entered alone. The beast waited outside, not because it was ordered, because it chose to. The high speaker of the Veln pulsed his words through the air. You have returned. You survived. That does not mean you belong. Kellen looked at them. One by one. You sent me to die. You thought Vorlag would erase me. You thought no human could endure. But I did not just survive. I became part of the world. I earned the trust of the apex predator. I led the jungle in war. And I walked out not as a victor over nature, but as its partner. Can any of you say the same? Silence. The Gorth rumbled. We dominate, we control, we do not beg the wild for alliance. Then you will always fear it. Kellen stepped forward. You live in glass towers, you travel in metal shells. You have forgotten what it means to feel the earth, to hear the wind, to stand in the storm and not run. Humans have not forgotten. We were born in fire and ice. We rose from caves and dust. We crossed oceans in wood and sail. We walked on the moon with flags and dreams. You have technology. We have will. You have order. We have heart. And that is why we will never break. The Xantharian elder spoke. You ask for membership. Kellen shook his head. I do not ask. I claim. Because the galaxy has already decided. Look outside. On every screen. On every world. They are not waiting for your approval. They are waiting for me. A signal came in. Live feed from Earth. Millions stood in the streets, not in protest, in pride. Flags waved. Songs played. Children held drawings of a man and a beast standing on a cliff. The message was clear. We are not coming. We are already here. The Council hesitated. They feared what he represented. Not just strength, not just survival, but inspiration. If one human could do this, what would happen when 10 stood together? When 100? When 1,000,000? The high speaker finally said, humanity may enter the Union, but under observation, restricted zones. No military access. Kellen turned to the door. Then you will have war. Not from me, from them. He pointed to the screens. To Earth. To the colonies. To every human who has ever been called weak. You do not control us by rules. You earn us by respect, and you have not earned it. The Vorthrax stood as he walked out. No one stopped him. No one dared. That night the signal went out again. Not from the Council. From Earth. We do not need your permission. We are humanity, and we are rising. The silence that followed Kellen's departure from the Council chamber was not empty. It was thick, heavy, like the air before a storm. The 7 leaders of the Union sat in their floating thrones, eyes on the screens still showing the streets of Earth. Millions of humans stood under open skies, not shouting, not raging, but standing tall. Flags waved in the wind. Children held up drawings of a man walking beside a beast. Songs played in every language, not anthems of war. Songs of pride, of home, of fire in the blood. The galaxy had not seen anything like it, not in centuries, not in memory. The Veln whispered through their neural field. This is not order, this is chaos. The Gorth pulsed their deep voice. They will disrupt the balance. But the Xantharian elder, ancient and slow, spoke last. No. They will redefine it. And we cannot stop them, because they do not fight like warriors, They rise like nature, and nature always wins. On the station, Kellen did not return to the ship. He walked, barefoot on the silver floors. The Vorthrax followed, no leash, no chain. No soldier dared to block his path. Some stepped aside, others bowed their heads, not because they feared the beast, but because they understood what it meant. This creature had torn through armies. It had shattered stone with its roar, and yet it walked behind a human like a guardian, not tamed, not broken, chosen. Kellen reached the observation deck, a vast dome of crystal looking into the endless. Dark, stars burned in silence, ships moved like fireflies. He stood at the center. The beast crouched behind him. Then Kellen placed his hand on the floor. A signal, soft, calm. The Vorthrax rose and stepped forward, onto the deck. Alarm screamed. Red lights flashed. Security forces rushed from the halls. But they stopped at the door. The beast did not growl, did not move toward them. It simply stood, beside Kellen, eyes on the stars, as if it had every right to be there. Kellen turned to the cameras. He knew they were watching. The whole galaxy was watching. You wanted proof, here it is. This being beside me is not a weapon. It is not a slave. It is not a monster. It is my brother. We survived the same world. We fought the same war. We bled for the same ground. And when no one else stood with me, he did. So tell me, Council. Tell me, species of the Union. Who is more civilized? The ones who build walls and hide from nature, or the ones who walk with it? Who heal it? Who earn its trust? Silence answered. Then the High Speaker of the Velm finally spoke. You have proven survival. But survival is not governance. You cannot bring that creature into the Council. It is a threat. Kellen smiled. Not in anger, in pity. You still do not see it. He turned and placed his hand on the beast's neck. This is not a threat. He is the future. Because if humanity can stand beside the most feared predator in the known galaxy and call it ally, then what will we do with your wars? Your borders, your fear? We will end them, not with weapons, but with understanding. The security forces still stood at the door, weapons raised but not fired. The beast looked at them once, then turned away, a gesture not of fear, of indifference, as if to say, I could destroy you, but I choose not to. That was more terrifying than any roar. Then the Xandarian elder entered, alone, no guards, no weapons. He moved slowly, his star-like eyes dim with age. He stopped before Kellen. You speak of understanding, but the Union is built on law, on order, on separation. We keep species apart to prevent war. Kellen nodded. And yet war still comes. Because you do not solve hate, you contain it. Humans do not contain. We transform. We took fire and made it warmth. We took stone and made it shelter. We took war and made it peace. Not in a day. Not without blood. But we never stop trying. The elder looked at the Vorthrax. And this bond. Is it real? As real as your fear? The elder reached out slowly. A test, a challenge. The beast lowered its head, just slightly. Not submission, respect. The elder placed his hand on the creature's shoulder. And for the first time in history, a being of the Union touched an apex predator of Vorlag and lived. No one spoke. No one moved. Then the elder said, perhaps we have been wrong. Perhaps strength is not in shields, but in open hands. A vote was called. The council debated. Hours passed. The galaxy waited. Then the final word came. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Union, with equal rights. Full access. No restrictions. But the decision did not come from the Velm or the Gorth. It came from the Xandarians. And then the others followed, not because they were convinced, but because they saw the truth on every screen, on every world. Where humans once bowed, they now stood. Where humans once begged, they now led. And the symbol of it all was not a flag, not a ship, not a weapon. It was a man and a beast standing together under the stars. Kellen did not celebrate. He looked at the elder. This is not the end. It is the beginning. Because now the galaxy will learn what we already know, that the strongest force in the universe is not power. It is connection. And we are just getting started. That night the Vorthrax let out a single roar, not of anger, not of war. Of rival. And across the stars a million humans looked up. And smiled. The stars burned cold and distant as the Union core station turned slowly above the dead sun. Inside the great dome of the council chamber, the air was still. No alarms, no shouts, no fear, just silence. The decision had been made. Humanity was no longer an applicant, no longer a test subject. We were members, equal, free, unchained. But Kellen Voss did not stay to hear the final words. He did not sign the documents. He did not raise a glass with diplomats. He turned and walked away with the Vorthrax at his side and the eyes of the galaxy on his back. He did not return to Earth. He did not claim a throne in the stars. He went back to Vorlag. The drop ship descended through the storm layer just as the first one had. Fire wrapped the hull. Thunder cracked the sky. But this time the planet did not roar in warning. It rumbled in welcome. The jungle below pulsed with life. The rivers ran clear. The black trees swayed as if bowing. When the door opened, Kellen stepped out barefoot onto the warm soil. The Vorthrax followed, not as a beast, not as a weapon, as a king returning home. The jungle remembered him. Predators watched from the shadows, not to attack, to honor. The thermal springs still bubbled. The cave was untouched. His spear rested where he left it. He picked it up, tested the edge, then walked to the high ridge, the same place where he had first stood with fire and will against the dark. He looked out over the world that had tried to kill him, that had shaped him, that had chosen him, and he smiled, not because he had won, but because he had not forgotten. Days passed. He rebuilt the camp, not for war, for peace. He planted seeds from earth, tough grasses that could survive the acid rains. He carved new tools. He mapped the northern ruins. He left offerings at the stone throne, not to worship, to remember. The giants who came before, the ones who fell. He would not fall, not like them, because he did not rule alone. One night under twin moons the Vorthrax vanished. Kellen did not panic. He waited. At dawn the beast returned, not alone. Two juveniles followed, wounded, thin, scared. They had been cast out, rejected by their pack. Left to die. Kellen did not hesitate. He cleaned their wounds, gave them water, shared his food. The Vorthrax watched. Then it stepped forward and touched each on the neck, a sign, a claim. They were not prey. They were family. And so the ridge became a sanctuary. More came, injured beasts, lost predators, even a sky lizard with a broken wing. Kellen healed them, fed them, taught them to trust, not through force, through patience, through fire shared, through silence respected. The jungle changed. The kills near the ridge stopped. The attacks on travelers dropped. Word spread among the creatures. This place was safe. This man was not enemy. He was guardian. Back in the galaxy the myth grew. On Earth they built statues, not of soldiers, not of kings, of Kellen with his hand on the beast's neck. Children wore cloaks like his. Soldiers trained in wilderness survival. Scientists studied animal bonds. The Union opened new programs, human xenobiology exchange. For the first time aliens came to Earth not to judge but to learn. They walked in the wild. They sat by campfires. They listened, and they began to change. The Veln stopped building walls. They planted forests in their cities. The Gorth ended their gladiator pits. They began to heal their wounded instead of discarding them. The Xantharians opened schools on dead worlds teaching connection over control. It was not fast. It was not easy. But it was real, because one human had shown them something they had forgotten, that strength is not in domination. It is in balance. Years passed. Kellen did not age like others. The planet had changed him. His skin was tough, his eyes sharp. He spoke little. But when he did the jungle listened, the beasts followed, the storms paused. He was no longer just a man. He was a force, a legend, a bridge. One day a Union ship landed again. Not diplomats, not soldiers. A young girl, human, from Mars. She carried a box. She walked up the ridge trembling. "Sir," she said, "my name is Lyra. I read about you. I came to ask one thing." Kellen looked at her. "Speak." She opened the box. Inside was a small creature, a Vorlag hatchling, barely alive, rescued from a smuggler's ship. They were going to sell it, as a pet, a trophy. "I knew you would care." Kellen knelt, touched the tiny beast. It breathed weakly. He looked at Lyra. "You did right." He took the hatchling, fed it, warmed it. For 3 days he did not sleep. On the 4th the eyes opened. It made a soft sound, not a growl, a call. The Vorthrax came, looked down, then gently touched the small one with its nose. A new bond began. Lyra stayed, learned, grew, and one day she left not as a child, but as a guardian, carrying the truth across the stars, that humanity does not conquer. We connect. We rise. We endure. And we never forget those who walk beside us. On the final night Kellen stood on the cliff, the twin moons high, the wind calm, the beast at his side. He looked up at the sky, at the stars, at the ships that now carried human names. Earth was no longer alone. We were everywhere. Not through war. Not through force. Through courage, through heart, Through the unbreakable bond between man and the wild, he raised his spear one last time. Not in war. In honor. And from every jungle, every mountain, every world where a human stood tall, a voice answered. Not in words. In spirit. We are here. We are strong. We are human. And we are just beginning. The wind did not howl that night. It sang, a low deep hum that rose from the roots of the world and climbed into the sky like a prayer. Kellen stood on the highest ridge of Vorlag where the earth met the storm, his feet bare against the warm stone, his armor of bone and scale gleaming under the twin moons. The Vorthrax stood beside him not as a beast of war, but as a guardian of balance. Its great head raised, its molten eyes reflecting the stars. Below, the jungle breathed in rhythm with his heartbeat. The rivers ran clear. The predators moved in silence. The planet was alive, and it was at peace. This was not the end of a story. It was the beginning of a truth. Kellen had not returned to the Union. He had not claimed power in their glass towers. He had not ruled from a throne of metal and light. He had stayed where the world was raw, where life fought for every breath, where fire and blood shaped the soul. Because this was where humanity began, not in cities, not in ships, in the wild, in the struggle, in the choice to stand when all others fall. Years had passed. The galaxy had changed. On Earth they no longer bowed to alien judges. They stood as equals. Human colonies rose on dead worlds, not with weapons, but with seeds. Forests grew where dust once ruled. Rivers flowed where machines had drained the land. The Union still existed, but it was different. The Veln walked barefoot on soil. The Gorth raised their young with care, not combat. The Xandarians studied Earth's animals not to dissect but to understand. And in every school on every world one story was told above all others. The man who was left to die, who returned not with a weapon, but with a brother, and changed the stars. Kellen did not teach with words. He taught by being, by healing the wounded beast, by sharing fire with the lost, by standing between the storm and the weak. Children from across the galaxy came to Vorlag not to conquer but to learn. They arrived scared, starved, broken. Some ran at the first roar, others stayed. And those who stayed became something new. They learned to listen, to wait, to earn trust. They left not with trophies but with scars, with wisdom, with fire in their bones. One day a ship landed that did not carry a child. It carried a leader. The high speaker of the Xandarians came alone. No guards, no weapons. Just a cloak of night blue and eyes full of stars. He climbed the ridge slowly. The Vorthrax watched, did not growl, did not move. Kellen stood waiting. You have not returned to the stars, they said. I am already there. He pointed to the ground. This is my home. This is my duty. The elder stepped forward. We have ended the crucible. Trials. No species will be cast out to die again. Because of you. Kellen nodded. Then end the fear. Not just the trials. And the belief that strength is in walls. In weapons. In distance. True strength is in the hand that heals. In the voice that calms. In the one who walks into the dark and does not destroy it, but becomes part of it. The elder placed his hand on the stone. We are trying, and we are learning. From you, from all humans. Kellen looked at the sky. A human ship passed overhead. Not Union, not Earth, free. Bearing no flag but a single symbol. A man and a beast standing together. That night the jungle gathered, not by force, by call. Predators, scavengers, flyers, crawlers, they came from every valley, every ruin, every fire. They stood in silence around the ridge, watching, waiting. The Vorthrax stepped forward, lowered its head, and placed a single scale at Kellen's feet. Not a gift, a surrender, a sign that he was no longer guessed, he was kin. Kellen picked up the scale, held it to the moonlight, then placed it around his neck. And for the first time in history a human was named brother by the apex of a world. No war followed. No conquest, only peace. Deep, real, unshakable. Years passed. Kellen grew old not in body but in spirit. His steps slowed, his hands trembled, but his eyes never dimmed. When he could no longer walk the ridge the beasts carried him. When he could no longer speak they listened to his breath. And when the final night came the jungle fell silent. The Vorthrax lay beside him. The stars burned bright. And as the first light touched the cliffs Kellen Voss closed his eyes. Not in fear. Not in pain. In peace. The beast raised its head and roared, not a cry of loss, a song of honor. And from every corner of Vorlag the call answered. 1,000 voices. 1,000,000 hearts. The planet mourned. And remembered. They buried him not under stone, but under a great tree grown from earth's soil. Its roots spread deep. Its branches reached the sky. No words were carved, no name, No title. Just a single mark. AHANDPRINT dot, and beside it a claw print dot together dot equal dot forever. Across the galaxy, when a human child looks up at the stars, they do not see distance, they see possibility. When a soldier stands in battle, they do not fight for land. They fight for the idea that no one is too weak to rise. When a scientist discovers something new, they do not claim it for power. They share it for growth. Because we are not just a species. We are a promise that no matter how dark the world, no matter how loud the storm, no matter how deep the wound, a human will stand, will heal, will rise, and walk forward, not alone, but with the wild at their side. The end.